Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. Today is 7th January 2024. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Hardan, 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 Haribol, TSV Nectar, NECTAR, Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been trying to analyze and discuss the topics or knowledge that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been trying to do in all my previous videos. Kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my previous, present, and future videos. So let us continue with the topic of discussion for today's video. In the past few videos, we have been trying to analyze in detail one particular term that plays a very important and perennial part or a role in the life and psyche of every human living entity, whether male or female, in a particular lifetime in this material world. This term is known as mind. Mind is a very important instrument entwined with the four layers of material body that envelops this particular individual spirit soul when it tries to get in touch with this material world. Mind, along with the three types of ego, are very important aspects in this particular study about the spirit soul and the individual living entity. The three types of ego are false ego, ego, and superego. False ego is when a particular living entity, that is, a combination of the individual spirit soul and the four layers of material body, identifies himself or herself with his or her material body. 95% of humanity usually resorts to this type of ego, where one introduces himself or herself to the others as this body, which is a combination of the individual spirit soul and the four layers of material body. Of the other 5% to 10%, some are those who resort to ego. They may not necessarily introduce themselves on that ego aspect, but they believe it in their own individual psyches and mind. This ego is where the same living entity realizes that he or she is not this material body or a combination of four layers of material body, but that individual unevolved raw spirit soul which got initially in touch with this material world, resulting in this material world enveloping that particular spirit soul with four layers of its own material body. This is considered to be of a spiritual level where that living entity realizes that he or she is actually a spirit spark turned individual spirit soul. However, there is another type of ego. This ego is known as superego. This is a very rare phenomenon in the case of the mortals and the ordinary human living entities. This is completely cerebral in nature. Here, that particular living entity identifies himself or herself neither as a material body nor as an individual spirit soul, but just as a spirit spark that fortunately or unfortunately, advertently or inadvertently, knowingly or unknowingly, by default or by design, deliberately or otherwise, got ejected into the space from the spiritual whole. There is one spirit whole which is akin to a fireplace. We all were initially spirit sparks which were a part and parcel of that spirit whole, just like sparks of fire were just sparks in that particular fireplace. Just like sparks of fire get usually ejected out of the fireplace due to different reasons, we individual spirit sparks got ejected out of this spiritual hole and thus began revolving in this or roaming around like zombies in this space which is a part of this universe. It is a long story where this spirit spark one day got attracted to this material world, tried to get in touch with that material world, became a spirit soul from a spirit spark, and was ultimately enveloped with four layers of the same material body and got a new identity as a human, a living entity, or just a living entity which became a part and parcel of this material world. Later on, after some time, when this living entity got acclimatized to this material world, it got into an endless chain of births and deaths in various species till one day this particular living entity realized its true identity and became spiritual and started endeavoring to get liberated from this repeated cycle of births and deaths. However, it is a very different story. Here we are trying to discuss and analyze this totally material aspect or instrument called mind. In the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata, there is one particular segment called Srimad Bhagavad Gita. In this Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, advises Arjuna about this whole theory and purpose of life, which is applicable to every human living entity, whether male or female. In that, Lord Krishna compares this individual human living entity to a chariot which is being driven by five white horses. According to him, these five horses are the ingredients of the third layer of material body, which is subtle and is called the etheric body of senses. These senses are sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Each horse belongs to one sense, and each sense is usually different in its work, observation, experience, and thinking than the other, as a result of which each horse that represents one sense tries to go into one direction as per that sense. Example, the horse representing the sight may be attracted to one direction, while the one which is representing the smell sense of the living entity is attracted to another direction. So is the case with one which represents the hearing, one which represents the taste, and one which represents this uh, touch. In such a case, every horse may be running in different directions. To control these horses and to give this chariot called the human living entity a particular direction which is the purpose of its own life in a lifetime, you need one driver. The causal body of intelligence and logic is actually that driver who is perched on the pilot seat of that particular chariot. He has the reins of all the five horses and he is trying to control, regulate, and monitor these horses so that that chariot may go in one particular direction towards its ultimate goal. In this particular chariot, there is a passenger seat where there is only one passenger. This passenger is actually that spirit soul, that unevolved, raw, individual spirit soul. This particular spirit soul is as helpless in his or her position as a passenger is when he or she is not driving that vehicle. Here, that chariot called the human living entity. He or she enjoys or suffers, learns, experiences, and gets matured according to the direction towards which the intelligence or the driver of that chariot called intelligence is trying to regulate the five horses of the senses towards so that he or she may reach an ultimate goal which is set for that chariot. However, there is one particular instrument in that chariot which is the main and driving force behind that particular chariot. We know about the senses, the intelligence, and the passenger called the spirit soul. But this instrument without which that particular vehicle will not move is known as mind. Every individual a living entity, especially human, whether male or female, is equipped with one individual mind, which is its driving instrument. The mind in a human, a living entity, namely that chariot, is just like an engine in a vehicle or machinery or a chip in an electronic equipment. An engine or the chip are the main ingredients of that particular vehicle, machinery, or electronic equipment. In the absence of this engine or this chip, that vehicle, machinery, or electronic equipment becomes totally redundant and it now has only a scrap value. Similarly, this chariot called the human living entity has only scrap value when that particular individual mind is absent from that particular human living entity, whether male or female. This shows us the importance of this particular mind. In every living entity, This instrument called mind begins operating 9 months before the birth of that particular human living entity in that particular lifetime in this material world. It stops functioning only at the end of that particular living entity's role or period in this lifetime. That is when that particular living entity takes his or her last breath. Till that time, this mind is working in that chariot called that human living entity. However, here I would hasten to add that this mind is of subtle nature. It is not visible to the naked eye of the fourth layer of material body that envelops the spirit soul. This eye, which is just a sense organ, and the sight, which is a part of the etheric body of senses, can not visualize this mind because this mind is actually regulating their movements in a lifetime. This mind has a counterpart which is gross and which is safely embedded in the cranium of the gross body of every human living entity. This brain is actually a mass of tissue with trillions of cells and nerves that become ingredients of that brain. This brain represents that subtle mind in the life of every individual living entity. It is this brain which acts according to the vibrations sent by that mind to it so that it may regulate this chariot called this human living entity. In the absence of mind, this living entity drops his or her gross body into the terra firma, ending his or her life in a lifetime, and the subtle bodies, along with ego and mind, get blended into the ether in the space, waiting to be born again according to their destiny and karma in some other birth. This is one process which has been going on and on for times immemorial. We have been trying to analyze how the mind of every individual living entity works and why that particular living entity behaves in a particular fashion. This is according to his or her destiny, karma, birth, atmosphere, surroundings, education, experience, maturity, choice, preferences, whims, and fantasies of every individual human living entity, whether male or female. After understanding this, we must learn further that in a society, in a lifetime, there are three types or categories of human living entities, whether male or female. At any given time, 75% of these human living entities are in a zombie like, trance like, vegetative state in this material world. They carry on with their life in that sanguine, complacent state where they think that they have come into this material world only to enjoy or suffer what they have been thrown at by this material world according to their destiny or karma. Such living entities do not realize that there is a purpose in life for them in every lifetime. They come here, vegetate, eke out a living, and try to produce some offspring of their own variety to fill the space that has already been left by other living entities who have passed on. It is thus that the society keeps thriving with this multitude of humanity. There are a remaining 25% of humanity. 75% are zombie like vegetative living entities. Of the other 25%, 20% are attracted and gravitate towards the dark and negative forces of this material world, which has been here for times immemorial, beginning with the advent of every living entity in this material world. In other words, any living entity of any lifetime who gets gravitated toward these dark forces finds that it has been in existence in this material world for times immemorial. This particular living entity only puts his own part of contribution in the already existing negative dark forces. The remaining 5% are what are known as the chosen ones. These 5% are neither the vegetative zombie like individual living entities, nor are they gravitating towards or attracted to the dark negative forces. Instead, they are attracted to the existing positive forces in this material world. These living entities may either be positively material or positively spiritual or both. Actually, it is the third case which is more in existence. There are living entities who may be carrying on with their lives, individual lives in a particular lifetime in the positive side, but they may in the material side, but they may also be attracted to the spiritual side of a life, which makes their own lifetime a success. This is all I wanted to talk about in this particular video. We will continue this discussion in my next video. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular subject. Please give me your own expert thoughts, opinions, ideas, and views on this particular subject so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.